And there's another bone.
To my relief, at least some bones have survived.
Well, there's the lower jaw. Looks intact. That doesn't look as if it's crushed. I'm amazed at the condition of this skeleton. When we first saw the coffin, I expected that whatever was inside it was going to be crushed, flat as a pancake. But the skeleton's in almost perfect condition. Even the skull, the most fragile part.
Locked away within the well-preserved bones may be chemical signatures, clues about this person's background, their life, and even their ancestry.
I take it you've managed to extract some DNA from the teeth, have you? Because
DNA is made up of 4 chemical bases known by the letters A, C, G and T. They're strung together in a chain 3 billion letters long, within which the precise order of the letters is crucial. To look at relationships between people, Helen is using a small section of ancient DNA, 400 letters long.
And what we can see at the top here is a sequence from European. It's actually the most common sequence in Europe. We call that the reference sequence. And underneath that, I'm looking at the same section from the female from Bath, the DNA that I extracted. And when we look at this section, well, actually, she's exactly the same. So there's an A here in our European sequence, and also an A here in our Bath female. There's a C up here and a C here, and this continues right through the length of the sequence.
So T3 A's and a G, T3 A's and a G. Right. So she is definitely European. But what about the man? Where does he come from?
The third line is the male from Bath. Male was definitely a bit different, and actually when we look on the screen here we can see where he's different in one of the spots. So we looked across. Here in our European reference we've got a T. We're looking at exactly the same place in our female from Bath. Well, she's got a T as well. But now looking at that same spot in our male from Bath, he's got a C there. So he's got a different letter there in his DNA sequence.
But does one little difference like this make that much of a change?
Well, in isolation, no it doesn't, but if you think there's a few changes on such a short region of DNA, and then there are 3 billion bases and covering that region to have changes in, well, start to see there can be quite a lot of changes and a lot of differences between people.
So he's definitely not European then? The sequence just doesn't fit?
No.
So where is he from?
Well, of course, that was the question I was asking, so I went and trawled through our database trying to find some matches. Here's one of them. There's the T we were looking up in our normal European, and a C here in this one that I found a match with, and the C in our male from Bath. But this guy is not from Europe at all. This guy's from Syria.
From Syria?
People with this sequence are found right throughout the Middle East and North Africa.
Now,
but not Britain.
Does this mean that he came from North Africa?
Actually, what it means is his ancestors did, and more specifically his maternal ancestors. What this is saying is that his mother or his mother's mother, the female line, came from North Africa or the Middle East.
And you can tell all that just from the odd change in the letter, just change in the DNA.
So how did this man, whose ancestry lay somewhere in the Middle East or North Africa, end up in Bath in the late 4th century? Britain was on the edge of the Roman world, but its wealthy inhabitants still wanted the luxuries of life. Exotic spices, silks and glassware were manufactured or traded in the Middle East and North Africa, and were brought to Britain along well-established trading routes. And sometimes the traders who brought these goods stayed on to live in Britain. This tombstone in South Shields is of the wife of Barathes, a wealthy silk merchant from the city of Palmyra in Syria. So perhaps it was trade that brought our man across the empire to end his days in Bath.
I'm always intrigued to see what one of these faces you built's like, but I think this one I'm even more intrigued than usual because of all the hints that we've got about where this person might have come from.
Yeah.
There were hints when you were looking at the skull, weren't there, that he was going to be something a bit different.
Yeah,
so
he
has he turned out to be a bit different?
Yeah, he's unusual, and I think that the face is certainly not an average face.
It's such a big face, isn't it? You've reconstructed the faces of a lot of Egyptian mummies, haven't you?
Yeah.
How would he fit in with that? I mean, would you have been surprised if he'd come from an Egyptian mummy?
Not at all. There's a lot of characteristics that are similar. This slight prognathism, but also the downward sloping nasal spine that you often see with ancient Egyptians. This ambiguity about the racial origins when you look at the skull, that's all very common in ancient Egyptians. So if you told me he was Egyptian, I wouldn't be very surprised.
I mean, this is just another bit of evidence, really, because everything so far has pointed in this direction. The isotopes, the DNA, and
Very
now,
consistent.
yes, and now you're saying even his face has turned out looking almost as we would have expected.